Are the measures that are being pushed through in the Senate appropriate at this point?
It serves as a really good morale boost for Hong Kong people who basically all of a sudden that they wake up one morning and in Hong Kong has completely changed from a free city to a city where you cannot even uphold a banner, or you get arrested for having a banner in your backpack. You didn't even unfurl it. And so this is a very good morale boost for Hong Kong people. But on the other hand, Congress has passed actually a whole series of acts supporting Hong Kong. The ball is in the administration's court. It's really up to the administration to turn these acts into concrete measures. So last week, the Pompeo and also the Commerce Department said that they were going to ban dual-use technologies to Hong Kong. That can have some significant effect. And then we still have to wait and see if the administration is going to impose sanctions on banks and individuals and other institutions that are involved in violating Hong Kong people's human rights.
The risk for the US, of course, is that it has a trade surplus, quite a considerable trade surplus with Hong Kong, over $30 billion US dollars, according to 2018 numbers. There's a risk, of course, that with these measures, it impacts not just US companies, but Hong Kong companies, the people of Hong Kong as well, without changing Beijing's behaviour. Let's be frank, it's not going to change what is happening here in Beijing. So is it all worth it? And what are the concrete measures you'd like to see beyond this put in place?
I think you're quite right that Beijing for all this time has been basically daring that the U.S. is not going to take these measures that would amount to a lose-lose situation. Because anytime that you impose trade sanctions, financial sanctions, that U.S. business interests can lose as much as the other side that you want to hurt. And so the imposition of the ban on dual-use technologies would be a lot more important, because a lot of these companies that import dual-use technologies also are involved with either that they themselves are state-owned enterprises or they work with state-owned enterprises, whereas imposition of financial sanctions could impact ordinary citizens a lot more. But at the same time, though, at this point when Hong Kong really enjoys no autonomy, does it really make sense to still give Hong Kong all the special privileges and allow China to still take advantage of them?
Victoria, the one thing that people are a little bit more alarmed about is this whole ability that this law has for China to arrest foreign nationals if they spread malicious rumors, if they work or collude with foreign nations in sanctioning Beijing. It's one thing to prosecute Hong Kong residents domestically and internationally, but how difficult do you think is it for China to enforce this on anyone?
You are quite right that this is essentially also for the same reason. About 10 days or so ago, that the U.S. said we're going to impose sanctions, impose visa restrictions on Chinese leaders who are involved in abusing Hong Kong's human rights. Well, if these people are not interested in traveling to the U.S., then what does it mean to say that you are going to impose a visa ban? For the same reason, if China says that these people, if you guys come, then you're going to get into trouble. If a lot of these people don't even want to go to China or Hong Kong or Macau, then it really wouldn't mean anything at all. However, what it does mean is that what China seems to be wanting to do is to make sure that those Hong Kongers who appeal for international attention, international support, they will get into trouble. And then people like me, Hong Kongers who live abroad, cannot go home. So this does have some chilling effect, for many people. But on the other hand, it also means that a lot of Hong Kongers, the friends that I know, they just want to even fight even harder.
Is there any way that any international body, international court can actually challenge this then?
So I think everyone except Beijing itself believes that China has violated the Sino-British Joint Declaration. It's an international treaty filed with the United Nations in 1984. But then when it comes to international agreements, because these parties are sovereign states, and only if Beijing agrees, accedes to the jurisdiction of, for example, the International Court of Court of Justice, then there's really no jurisdiction over China. On the other hand, if it's not just the United States, when we talk about the U.S. imposing sanctions on, for example, HSBC and other banks that have pledged support for the national security law, if it is not just the U.S., but also British banks, European banks, Korean banks, Japanese banks, and all of these democracies work together, then it can have an impact.
Victoria, are businesses potentially overlooking the political risks and ramifications of this security law?
I think you are quite right, because for so long that business interests have been saying that, well, maybe things are not going too well sometimes in Hong Kong. For example, the abduction of a bookseller from Hong Kong across the border, or there have been increasing cases of corruption in Hong Kong, or Hong Kong used to have basically a very clean record when it comes to all the infrastructural constructions. But these days, you have cost overrun, you have also the railway construction that have serious problems with safety risks. And because a lot of these contracts are now just won by China Construction or other state-owned construction companies. But at the same time, everyone still wants to look around and say, well, it's fine. It doesn't matter so long as we are still making money, so long as everyone is still earning some profit margin so that we can report to our shareholders. You're quite right. This law is going to affect, so maybe not so much people who comment on China, but they don't ever plan to go to China. But if you have any business deals with China, you ever plan to go to China, if you are an American or European working in Hong Kong, then I think it can get to you sooner or later.
But Victoria, just playing devil's advocate, given Hong Kong's importance in the financial world, given the amount of mainland money that there is that sits in Hong Kong right now, can you at least give some benefit of the doubt that Beijing will tread lightly with this bill and actually exercise some form of pragmatism? I mean, we were speaking to lawmakers that's on the pro-China side or moderate side that said, look, just stay out of politics and stay out of these 4 crimes, and life for Hong Kong people will remain relatively the same.
That is some truth to that in a way, but then it is also it is a function of not Beijing wants to do, but how Hong Kong people are going to react to it. I would think that if the rest of the world just look the other way, just like people issue condemnations about the quote unquote re-education camps in Xinjiang, about very repressive policies, language policies, cultural policies in Tibet. If the world continues to look away from what is going on in Hong Kong, then the implementation will be very hard. On the other hand, if the world is going to actually take some actions about Hong Kong, then I think that Beijing would try to think twice before it actually, sending these people to life imprisonment or even taking them across the border. The one person I'm the most worried about at this point is what's going to happen to Lei Chao-yan, who testified at the House Foreign Affairs Committee hearing yesterday. And would he be charged for colluding with foreign forces, which would mean that he's subject to life imprisonment. He could even be taken to Beijing for torture. So if that happens, then I think that, what's left for other people